Summer's out, so you know you need a healer to get those dungeons quicker now since the War Within is coming just around the corner. But what healer should you play? Well, in today's tier list, we're going to be ranking the healers based off how cool they are, what the rework has done, and the hero talents and the tier sets have overall impacted their gameplay. So which is you? Let's check it out, because we're going to be starting really quick with Restoration Shaman. I have played Shaman with all of its hero talents, and I have not been impressed by the hero talents. However, weirdly enough, they seem to feel the best on Restoration out of everything. Farseer, for instance, just made it so much more sense to be played with a Riptide build in dungeons, particularly during these over-tuned Mythic Plus that we've had last week, by the way, depending on when you watch this video. So some of this footage that you're going to be seeing in today's tier list is a little bit scuffed, because shit just hits harder than my dad when I stole his cupcake. That out of the way, Riptide has felt, and Farseer by extension has felt, some of the most reliable Resto Shaman gameplay that I could play in the new Mythic Plus season with all of the affixes, but Totemic wasn't terrible either. However, Totemic felt a little bit harder to play, considering that I decided to go for a more chain heal focused build, considering that it seemed like Totemic wanted me to play a little bit more chain heal focused builds with high tide and stuff like that. And it's a little bit harder to get these casts out at the beginning of a season, considering the cast time is pretty long and you don't have that much gear, and the haste levels that we've had on the beta were pretty low, around 12-13%-ish, and that doesn't help either, although you don't really want a lot of haste on Resto Shaman either, since you go really quick. But with that out of the way, I was surprisingly having a lot of fun, and considering that the hero talents made me choose my builds differently, and the tier set wasn't terrible either, I will put Restoration Shaman in A tier. And that's as far as Resto Shaman is concerned, because we're going to be checking Discipline.
Wait a minute! What are you doing with sunglasses inside, man? Have you lost it?
Well, not yet anyway, but I do love Dr. Disrespect, and I have learned that with all of this summer sun and the big fat light, my eyes just need a little bit of protection. So I just got these from GlassesUSA.com.
Oh, GlassesUSA.com. I think I heard about these guys.
Oh, you definitely heard about them, because they're one of the biggest retailers in eyewear in the US, and they have thousands of sunglasses and eyeglasses from all sorts of brands like Ray-Ban, Prada, Oakley, Gucci.
Hold up. Those are big brands, man. I don't have any money for that. What?
Well, that's the thing, man, because they actually start off from $39 a pop, because they do want their glasses to be cheap and affordable, and you can probably get about 70% off of the actual retail prices of sunglasses.
Yeah, but it's all online, man. How do I get those glasses to fit my fat face?
I got you covered. Well, they have you covered, because they have a really cool thing that I need to show you. This neat little feature called a live try-on. So when you select a frame that you want, you click it, and I wanted initially to get this, take a picture of my face, and now, there you go. Now you can see me with the glasses, and it looks like I'm gonna be single for the rest of the summer. So no, not these frames, but actually the ones that I really liked were these ones. Press the live try on, and hey, looking good. These are the ones that I got, and these are the ones that I have. And you can get yours from the description link down below, and you'll have discounts for the first 24 hours by clicking the link, and you'll be supporting the channel.
Yeah, and thank you GlassesUSA.com for sponsoring this video. I'm gonna go get mine right now.
Go get him, man. Now that he's gone, we can go back to talking about Discipline Priest. And dude, Discipline is cracked, dude. On Voidweaver at the very least. Tying the Entropic Rift to Mind Blast has been the smartest thing everybody has done since they introduced questing into World of Warcraft. It is so much fun to play Voidweaver, and playing the Shadow version of all of the Discipline stuff is incredibly cool, and some of the most fun that I've had on the beta with healing. I do have to say that this kind of applies to Holy Priest as well, and I will get to that more in detail. Oracle wasn't that great. First of all, it didn't really feel that impactful as opposed to other priest hero talents like Archon, for instance, which we'll get to it. But Premonition is something that I'm not particularly a fan of in its current design. It just feels like it's a non-choice option. So hear me out. Premonition essentially is 3 spells baked into one that rotate after you've used one of them with a, I believe, 1 minute cooldown, depending if you want to choose a talent that reduces this cooldown. And the capstone transforms Premonition into a 4th version at the end that just has all of the buffs. Now the thing is that these buffs are very specific for specific situations. Solace, for instance, just gives damage reduction to your target, to the target I think of the next single target heal, which is very strong, and it can get up to 21% damage reduction with a hero talent, and that's incredibly good. And you would want this on either your tank or a DPS that would normally soak some mechanics. The problem is that you have to cycle through 2 other minutes of these buffs, or 1 minute, let's say, of 2 other buffs of Premonition before you get to this one. And if you get to this one, do you hold it for that moment, or do you just use it then? This is the problem. You either hold Premonition and then it doesn't really feel that great and you don't have that much power, and then it just feels like you're ignoring either the cooldown reduction or anything else that the hero talent is supposed to do, or you're just firing it off on cooldown, trying to average out your overall performance on the spec, and at that point then it doesn't really matter what Premonition does, because we're going to be using it anyway, so you can get as many casts of it in as possible. So I'm very conflicted on this particular hero talent. But with that being said, I still feel like Discipline has been way more fun than Resto Shaman. If Oracle can probably have some changes, maybe make Premonition like a charged ability, where depending on the number of charges that you do, like Evoker for instance, you get a different version of the Premonition, whichever buff you want, so you can target the buffs you want when you want them, instead of having to fish for the one you want, hold it off for however long you have to do it, and then just firing it off when you need it. That is kind of what would keep this from being a potential S tier spec. Moving to Holy Paladin, this is probably the most controversial pick that I will have here. I am masochistically enjoying playing Holy Paladin with its current version. I am in full support that it needs some changes to its talents and to some of the playstyles, because I'm particularly not a fan of, or what is it, the Tears Deliverance and the Divine Favor, whatever the other talent is that improves your Holy Light, and you have to cast them both at the same time, and that's a 3-second cast, and then you have to do Holy Light. That takes so long to get through in terms of a healing combo, and when you pair it up with how fast the mechanics are happening in Mythic Plus, that just feels like you're never fast enough to heal people. Obviously, the top Holy Paladins in the world can manage it, and that's fine, but for us regular folk, that is almost close to impossible to pull off, unless you're that Holy Paladin that can do all of this and, you know, push plus 20 keys. But with that out of the way, it's just so fun. Although I would have loved the identity of Holy Paladin to be split into multiple styles of playstyles like Glimmer and Holy Infusion, the fact that you can meld all of these in and you can still play Glimmers, you can still play Infusion of Light procs and consume them on Holy Lights to do Giga heals. I've played it with Beacon of Virtue, which makes it explode in AoE healing, or with double beacons as well, with single Glimmer or multi AoE Glimmer as well. The choices in playstyle of Holy Paladin are diverse, at least in testing of the beta. We'll see if there's just like one that's so much better than the other, then you're a fool for not playing just that one. But the build diversity definitely feels really good, and I've enjoyed playing it. Not to mention that the hero talents for Holy Paladin are probably, I was gonna say the best, but I'm actually changing that thought process now and calling it the second best hero talent that healers have access to. Herald of the Sun is really cool, and Eternal Flame feels like a decent upgrade to Word of Glory with everything that it has going for it, while Lightsmith is probably stronger, but it's particularly difficult to press an extra button, considering that you still have, or at least you might still be playing Blessing of the Seasons or Blessing of Summer, or whatever extra button that you get to cycle through the buffs, like the Premonition for priests, plus every other button that Holy Paladin has, which feels like it's one of the healers with the most amount of bloat in terms of its cooldowns. It can get a little bit hectic, but it needs a lot of work to make it work. I love it so much. I love playing it. I love the playstyle of it, that I'm conflicted as to where to put it. So I'm going to put it at the bottom of the A tier. Although if I would have to rank it solely on just its hero talent or its talent design, it would probably be C tier. If I would have to rank it based on hero talent, it would probably be S tier. And if I would have to rank it based on playstyle, it would probably be A tier. So I'm kind of trying to get the middle ground here. So it's bottom A tier. That's as little as I can tone it down. But it's probably the healer that needs the most amount of help currently in the War Within. So don't let it being A tier distract you from that particular fact. Going into Holy Priest, like I mentioned before, in Archon it has one of the more interesting ways of playing Priest that I have engaged with, especially the most interesting way of playing Holy, period. Halo is, I didn't know I wanted Halo to be a big part of my rotation until I have played Archon, and it's so fun to launch those big Halos and see the back and forth wave ripple out and just heal and damage everything all around. The downside of all of the hero talents is that it doesn't really feel like it has a big impact for Holy Priest, at least from an average Holy Priest perspective. I don't really feel like I'm playing much else outside of Archon that just clearly makes me want to press Halo more. Oracle is just with the premonition issues that I mentioned before. And one positive thing about all this is that it doesn't really feel like it restricts me from playing particular talents. I might want to play Prayer of Mending on one of them, or maybe want to play Prayer of Healing on another, or things like that, which is not that bad considering that the tier set will kind of focus you into playing probably Prayer of Healing, or at least it's buffing Prayer of Healing if anything, so you might want to play that, but it at least gives you freedom in choosing the type of talent that you want to get into. Holy Priest still has a lot of buttons. It's no longer the simple healer that it once was. However, since I'm not a big fan of Holy Priest, I cannot realistically give it A tier status, but I will put it into B tier. It's a good spec. It has probably some of the highest throughput and most reliable healing pattern out of all of it, considering that it's been a pain to heal Mythic Plus last week, that I have to give it a little bit of a credit. And if you do want to play Archon, maybe it can go up to A tier, but the fact that Oracle is also there, just not a fan of it. Mistweaver has been a happy surprise though with how it's overall playing, with the talent swaps a little bit. I think some of the talents have been moved and some have been removed. Some new choice notes have been moved around, and you could probably play something similar to live right now, or probably do some different things if you so desire. I have had a lot of fun on Mistweaver Monk. I was surprisingly on, and quite a bit of throughput also. The problem is the hero talents. Conduit the Celestial is probably the one that I actually really enjoyed, because it obviously gives you a big bun that just heals everything all around, and that's fun, and it puts a lot of throughput out. And it's not like Master of Harmony wasn't necessarily good, but once again, it didn't really feel like I was... Vitality is fine, but it's not something that you actively interact with, or at least something that's obvious that you interact with. We probably need to read a guide on figure out exactly, listen, if you play it this way, then you get this extra. And to be fair, without a DPS meter or a healing meter in this sense, you still won't know what's going on with most of these hero talents, and Master of Harmony unfortunately is not a big difference. The power is there, clearly. It's not a bad hero talent to pick, and the power of Mistweaver is definitely there. You can heal for quite a bit, but it just doesn't feel particularly amazing or impactful. It feels very good just because it's a Mistweaver and has very little to do with the actual War Within expansion, which doesn't really feel that great. Even if a couple of talents have been moved around, Zen Pulse been made passive, that's really good. Chi Wave being made passive as well, also very good, reducing a little bit of the bloat. It still just doesn't feel that much different from the live version of Mistweaver. I will give it some credit though. It did feel a little bit more fun than Holy Paladin, even though fundamentally I like Holy Paladin more than Mistweaver. The fact that Mistweaver takes the cake in front of Holy Paladin puts it there. And you might notice that there are a lot of healer specs up. I generally had a lot of fun healing. And we're going into Preservation and our first S tier spec, maybe the only S tier. You'll have to wait until the Druid section, but Preservation has made me confused, dude, because I don't like the design of Draktheirs and how they look, but whoever's cooking the Evoker specs and the Evoker hero talents, Preservation included, is clearly onto something, man. You guys really enjoy playing World of Warcraft and playing good specs and classes in World of Warcraft. I do have to say that, and that's reflected into pretty much Preservation being S tier, and the other two Evoker spells in our previous range tier list also being S tier as well. It is crazy how good this is. Chrono Warden was fun. It definitely felt interesting, fire up empowered spells and shooting up living flames. It had some neat interaction and some like 5 heads, 500 IQ playstyles that you can do, but I have to say that I had the most amount of fun with Flame Shaper. I do want to mention, because people will probably point this out, Preservation is busted on beta. It is beyond, well, I don't know if it's beyond broken, but it does do the most amount of healing, and it does like triple the amount of healing that Holy Paladin is supposed to do. Now, be that as it may, overall healing in the War Within in the beta is way lower than it is on live. And I like to think that it is significantly lowered because they want to tone down the speed at which the healing gameplay goes on. Because we know on live the HP bars yo-yo all the time and people can die in 1 second, but they can also be fully healed in 1 second. We don't find that fun. Most people probably agree with this as well, as we've seen the community reception to overall healing, and it feels like in War Within that changes. The outlier is preservation, because it still feels like preservation can fully burst heal a party in a couple of seconds, which is something that no other healer can really do. Mistweaver kind of come close, but I don't know if it's necessarily intended. It is very fun, and to do it, you do need to cycle through a lot of combos, like a lot of time anomaly buffs with double dream breath dots, or HOTS rather, on your party, and then engulf another with time anomaly to just fully heal an amazing amount of people with crazy numbers. That's basically what Flame Shaper does, and it's really fun, and you can definitely use it offensively as well. This of course relies a lot on the tuning, which is something that we don't really take into consideration when we rank these healers, because tuning can definitely change. But as far as healing is concerned, tuning is very much tied to how healing will end up being, because if healers have too much power in their heals, then the damage that everybody will take will be buffed so that they can compensate the amount of burst power that healers have. I particularly feel like preservation should be nerfed, and overall the damage intake of everybody should be nerfed as well, so that healers cannot just fully burst people up, but they can also just not die in 1 or 2 seconds and feel like they have to yo-yo defensive cooldowns right now like we do on live. But be that as it may, tuning aside, preservation playstyle is just incredibly fun, and I have high hopes for Evoker. It's one of the classes that makes me confused as to what I should main in the War Within. Last but not least, Restoration Druid. This usually is one of my favorite healers, if not my favorite healer to play, and it has some ups and downs. I am still not sold on the Keeper of the Grove playstyle. Trance and Grove Tenders are not something that I feel good about pressing with Restoration Druid, and it's conflicting because it's a core identity of Druids and probably Restoration/Balance Druids period, but it's something that I just don't actively interact with or feel like they're reliable. They heal. The Trance or Grove Tenders in this case definitely heal for quite a bit, but I press them and they happen, and I kind of am hoping it's like, okay, you're healing my party. Hopefully you're healing my party. Please heal my party right now. That's basically what goes through my mind when I press Grove Tenders, right? The upside is that you can probably do some DPS while the Grove Tenders are up, but it's just not particularly engaging or fun. Not as much as Wildstalker is, funnily enough, which Wildstalker doesn't do anything revolutionary for Restoration Druid. It just allows you to reliably cat weave, which is what personally I find the most fun playstyle of Restoration Druid period, whenever I can just put HOTS up on everybody and then just go cat weave for a while. Also, once again, I do have to mention that restoration damage in cat form is busted, and it's not going to stay that way in beta, considering that I can, if I just focus on cat weaving, I will probably out DPS a bunch of DPS speckers in the game, and that's not intended for healers ever. That will definitely force every healer to be a restoration druid, and that's not fun for anybody. Damage aside, being able to cat weave is definitely very fun and definitely what I enjoy about Restoration Druid the most. And Wildstalker just makes hot healing just feel good and not have to rely on pets, which is something that is not core identity for Restoration Druid. Be that as it may, it doesn't really add anything interesting to Restoration Druid that we didn't have before. It makes cat stronger, it makes HOTS stronger, but it doesn't change anything else. So it's kind of going to make it very hard for me to put Restoration Druid in S tier, although I did have a lot of fun with Wildstalker, and to be fair, part of that fun definitely revolved around me actually doing a lot of damage as a cat. But since that's probably not going to stick, I will be putting Restoration Druid at the top of the S tier. It's kind of hard to decide between Discipline and Restoration Druid. Void Weaver was more fun than Restoration Druid. However, overall, Resto Druid was more fun than Discipline. So I will probably put Resto a little bit in front of Discipline, considering that Resto also was one of the healers that I've had the easiest time healing people with. Maybe it has a little bit more healing than it should have. We'll have to see how that plays out. But Restoration Druid has always been a pretty hard healer to play properly, considering how much predictability healing you have to do and make sure that everybody has their HOT up. and rejuvenation still feels bad to press in Mythic Plus. So we'll see how that plays out in the end. And that's as far as today's ranking go when it comes to the healers in the world.
Oh, I just got mine, man. Check these out, man.
Man, those are fire, dude.
With prescription and everything. So listen, click the link in the description, get yours as fast as I got mine. And thank you once again, GlassesUSA.com, for sponsoring the video.